Hello and welcome to coverage of the third Louisville Cube League Cubevitational. This is the first video out of 5 total, with each video covering one draft of our event, so please keep that in mind if you're trying to watch in order. So for anyone who isn't as familiar with our league or the Cubevitational, we schedule drafts roughly twice a month, usually 2 drafts but sometimes 3 in a day with enough participation, each with a different cube from amongst those in our group. At the end of about 6 months, we cut down to 8 people. We take the top 4 participants by their 8 best finishes and 4 other participants with the most overall match wins and qualified them for the Cubevitational. The first draft of the event is a Rotisserie Draft, in which participants were allowed to select their draft position based on their seeding order from regular season standings. The Cubevitational itself consists of 5 drafts over 2 days. The first day we played the matches for the Rotisserie Draft mentioned before, which was completed online prior to the event. Then we drafted the Pre-Modern Cube, which was new to our league for this event, followed by our Peasant Cube. The second day started with a new version of the Artifact Cube, now featuring green cards, and concluded with a seeded double elimination draft of the Alpha Frog Vintage Cube, in which the top 2 seeds get 2 buys each, and the 3rd and 4th place players get 1 buy. On top of that, the higher seed has play draw choice throughout this bracket. The Peasant Cube was voted on by participants via ranked choice from among our other cubes, and the Artifact Cube was match choice as the number 1 overall seed. We'll get into a little more detail on each cube and their respective video. Each video in this series will cover one of these drafts, with each participant featured in one match, with the exception of the final draft, in which we'll follow the results of the bracket. With that all being said, let's hop right into coverage of the first draft. The rotisserie pool we used for this event began as a combination of, at that time, the most recent Magic Online Vintage, Legacy, and Modern cubes. It's grown over time to accommodate both new cards added to those cubes as they come out, as well as cards that have just been requested to be added to the card base by participants in the league. As of this video, the rotisserie pool has about 1,700 cards in it, which leads itself to a large number of archetypes and a variety of play enabled, but as you might imagine, in a high-powered environment, we won't see a lot of those in this particular video. It is worth noting that this draft was the first time that we included several of the conspiracies in a rotisserie draft, so keep that in mind as you're watching some of the decks that came out of it. As was previously mentioned, the draft order for this was selected by the participants based on their regular season standings, and to that order, the draft order was Matt, Bats, then Jacob, Dittert, Joey, Bryan, Prose, and Scott bringing up the tail end. This is a snake draft, meaning that the 1st through 8th players make a pick, and then the 8th player makes a second pick, followed by the numbers in reverse order. When we do a rotisserie draft, starting with the 20th pick, players have the option to select 2 cards at once as well, to kind of speed up the later rounds of these drafts. The full draft spreadsheet will be linked in the description below, and we'll get into the details about each deck as we get into their match. Without further delay, let's get right into the matches.
Hello. Here we are taking a look at the first of 3 rotisserie matches that we're going to watch today. My name's Joey.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Prose.
And right away we see Bryan off to a very quick start. Bryan is playing a red aggro deck, but he lost his way a little bit during the rotisserie, taking a lot of green cards to add to his aggro deck, but there were a lot of other players in the land strategy he seemed to be trying to dip into. So we see Ragavan for an aggro start, but it's not all aggro over there.
Yeah, and Dittert's got himself a pretty good Reanimator shell going on, sneak attack as well in the mix, so he adds on to it with a few more controlling cards like Bowmasters and Shieldred, but we'll see what he can get up to here against Bryan. You'll notice, too, at the top of the screen, this draft did have conspiracies in it. So Bryan is featuring the Power Play Conspiracy, which always lets him go first, as well as the Advantageous Proclamation Conspiracy, which lets him play 5 less cards in his deck.
Right, giving him consistency in just trying to get those explosive turn 1s like we see that he had here. And I think maybe branching out from being straight aggro is probably going to help him, because as we can see here, Dittert's got a very quick Archon, I think a quick Archon crit Crystal Brand, quick Shieldred makes Reanimator good against aggro decks traditionally in Cube.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance, probably not in this game, but there's a chance overall in the match that Bryan's non-aggressive cards could help him fight against something like this. But
yeah, and I think normally an aggro deck would be happy to see Death used to reanimate, but Archon of Cruelty cushions the blow from Death a little bit there.
we see the Bauble pop to take a look at the top card, so Bryan's going to draw 2 cards here. And
No follow-up
playing
on turn
Stomping
2.
Ground tapped, not a good sign. He had a couple of things there. I believe he has Oko in his deck, so Oko could have elked the Archon to kind of reset Dittert, possibly give him back a little bit of the initiative in this game, but with this Archon swing, Dittert's refueled, and Bryan's already down to 8, so dead in 1 more attack from the Archon. Seems very likely we'll be at a quick game 2.
And glancing through the rest of his pool, it really is just Oko to deal with this Archon. I mean, he has no other answers that I'm seeing.
The only other thing that I can see right off would be a PN Kieran Delar just to survive for an extra turn or 2, but
Right, I mean, there's a chance he could string together a couple of burn spells pointed at it, but he doesn't even have a ton of those, so still
well, if his deck
playing,
doesn't have the answer, maybe Ditter's deck does.
but Orcish Bowmaster's going to shut that down, and we're on to game 2. So Bryan wasn't able to get that one on the play, but he still has 2 more on the play. Often it can feel bad being down a game on your aggro deck, having to possibly win game 3 on the draw, but again, Bryan's never going to be in that situation. Turn 1, Dragon's Rage's Channeler, though mana's a little awkward, so he only gets 1 Surveil, doesn't get one off of the Mott's Diamond. And it looks like that's a Magda going into the graveyard. Taking a look at his own top card here, interesting. Usually that implies some way to shuffle, but doesn't seem to be the case.
Or even just Surveil again.
True, but if you're then there'd be no point looking at the top card.
Right.
Not quite at Delirium either. That's Artifact, Creature, and Land for Bryan. And small thing, I consider Dittert shuffling here a win. It means we're not getting in Tomb again, otherwise we'd be waiting to shuffle. So unlikely to be facing as quick of an Archon here. Even though maybe I just saw it in Dittert's hand.
Okay, well there's your way to shuffle with crop rotation.
So that makes the looking make sense. I think we maybe missed the
Surveil, but we knew what the top card was, so maybe he just didn't want to get rid of it for whatever reason. But
this seems. Oh, and also looking at Dittert's top card maybe doesn't do anything because of Polluted Delta, though if we can trick him into shuffling, I actually think it would have allowed us this Strip Mine play possibly on Bryan's instep. You look at Dittert's top card, he shuffles to deny you the information, and then you get him with the Strip Mine. Whereas now Dittert presumably has a mana floating.
In the tank here about what to put under the Chrome Mox goes with the Bowmasters. Yeah.
Presumably that implies he had a more altogether plan prior to the C going away. Presumably it was to cast the Bowmasters in response to Channeler possibly getting Delirium, but with Delirium online, Bowmasters less effective.
It's just a Vamp Tutor there with the floating mana. Probably not Bryan's favorite thing to see after what he saw in Game 1.
Sure, but we've already got Dittert down to 14, so possibly going to be able to shut off some of the more life-expensive reanimation spells here soon. Though Black Lotus, meaning Dittert can have a pretty explosive turn.
Well, sneak attack is certainly that.
Do we have something to possibly respond to the sneak activation? Oof. So it was correct, that was the Archon in hand. Assume it was sneak attack or Black Lotus that got vamped for. Here we're force cycling. I can't imagine that has much of an effect here.
Yeah. Unless we just wanted a card to discard, I guess, but... Oh, we only had 2 cards anyways, so... And the Channeler is gone, yeah.
And 2 attacks means 6 life gained for Dittert as well. So even though he loses the Archon, he's now under no threat on board or with anything on, or his life total being particularly in danger.
See, in terms of sneak attack hits here, well, okay, never mind. There's one.
There we go.
Yeah.
I believe he has an Ulamog to sneak in, so
Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna take a quick glance just in time for the Eldrazi to hit the board. But
The Ints from Bryan was pretty interesting there. I wonder if that's in his main deck or he brought that in case of its Zoom so that he'd have more ability to get something back at least.
yeah.
But unfortunate that Dittert just had a very quick starts, even under a bit of a road bump from Strip Mine there in game 2. And after this match, Bryan did manage to pick up one more, but unfortunately ended up 1-3 in the Rotisserie overall.
Yeah, Dittert, we saw the powerful things his deck was capable of, but he ended up this draft with a 2-2 record, so...
Combo decks can definitely be dangerous in an environment where you're drafting it face up.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But let's move on, check out what some of the other people were playing. So here we have Jacob versus Scott. Jacob is on a wild creature-based deck playing Hymn to the Wild, so he can't play instants and sorceries, but his creatures all cost 1 less. Seeing him pass on the first turn here is interesting if that's the case. He also has Summoner's Bond, which pairs 2 of his creatures, and Unexpected Potential, and we'll get into how all those interact as they come up. But Scott, what are you starting with over here?
yeah. So as shown by the second land I played, I'm playing like a blue artifact deck centered around Urza Lord High Artificer and Tolarian Academy. I also have the Underworld Breach package of Lion's Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze. So I'm just trying to do broken things and kill my opponents.
And I said it was odd to see Jacob lead without a creature. In fact, that wasn't the case. It was a flashed-in Cathar Commando. So again, the first creature he cast each turn cost 1 less thanks to Hymn of the Wilds, even though it means he can't play instants and sorceries. So Cathar Commando for 1, and now Thalia Heretic Cathar slowing down all of your lands and creatures as they come into play. I don't believe she tags artifacts.
No, just non-basic lands and creatures.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm not particularly scared of that card. I already have my main non-basic in play, and I have a ton of basics in my deck. Creatures coming into play tap could affect me, but obviously my hand is a little light on action. I've just played a single Skull Clamp so far.
Of note, Jacob is missing a color here. He has a very light blue splash, but we'll see. So this turn starts with Thalia's Lieutenant. So coming in for 8 this turn means he has lethal next turn. And
I imagine the more problematic Thalia here.
Yes, absolutely. I do draw some cards here in response, but I am feeling pretty far on the back foot at this point.
Right, unless we have Tinker or anything like that, it seems difficult to achieve much here.
I believe that's a Mox that just got played a little off screen there.
Yeah, Mock Sapphire.
1 mana for it because of Thalia. And the Mots allows Academy to tap for 2, so able to pay the tax on this Cryptic.
Trying to see what do you know what you might have been digging for here in terms of a way to get out of this hole?
I believe I'm trying to set up a Lion's Eye Echo situation.
Difficult with Thalia in play. Did you have much removal this draft that could maybe get Thalia off the board?
I have a couple like Unholy Heat, Burst Lightning kind of things, but I did not start a lot of them. So game 1 against this deck, I'm really on the back foot pretty much from jump. I have a really good suite of things to bring in against creatures. So at this point, that Cryptic Command was mostly just trying to see if my deck could do anything, but I'm really already thinking about sideboarded games here.
Here we see Jacob point out that Trinket Mage comes into play tapped thanks to Thalia. Jacob also has his blue mana, so I will share here that Jacob does have Pestermite Kiki-Jiki in his deck. The Kiki-Jiki is his unexpected potential name, so possible that even outside of a lethal attack, he could have been setting up to combo there in that instance.
So this game, I've brought in all of my red removal, including Cast Into the Fire, which looked particularly good given the creatures he played. I also have Rolling Earthquake and Sweltering Suns. So lots of ways to kill a bunch of dorky idiots. So I'm hoping that this game's going to go a little better.
Turn 1 Thalia, probably not what you wanted to see there.
Especially if Jacob has one of his flash creatures. He took a lot of these since Hymn to the Wild is once on each turn. It's another part of the benefit of splashing blue for Pestermite, and I believe Malcolm is the name of the newest blue flash creature that Jacob was able to pick up. And just making sure through those Cathar Commando, he is getting as many uses out of Hymn of the Wilds as possible.
Bronzebeak Foragers there eating the Skull Clamp up.
Yeah, and my third land, my only other land was Tolarian Academy. I do have Cast Into the Fire in my hand right now, and I was really excited to hopefully get to kill 2 creatures. Instead, I'm going to cast no spells, and that's not going to bode well for my chances in this game.
Jacob's going to put Skull Clamp into your graveyard and gain some life. And another impressive army built here on turn 3, yeah.
This dinosaur has been really hard for me to evaluate in Cube how good it is, but when it cost 1 less, definitely quite powerful.
Spending a little time in the tank over here.
So there's a mana. Just question is it too late against what Jacob's putting together? Oh, I had missed that last turn we had the combo of put Skull Clamp into your graveyard so that it makes Lion Sash bigger. Exiling his own fetch land as well. And lethal attack.
But the crying.
Yeah, all over but the crying. How did the rest of your draft go?
I finished 2 and 2, giving up a really close one to Prose actually that I thought maybe I could have gotten, but yeah, this match against Jacob was a slaughter.
Yeah, Jacob actually wasn't able to string together much more. A lot of his other opponents had way more removal in the main deck and were able to fight against his quick starts, so he only ended up 2 and 2 despite how impressive the showing looked here.
With that one wrapped up, let's check out the next match.
And as we get into the last match of the Rotisserie here, we have myself versus Bats. I'm playing a 5-color deck thanks to the Conspiracy WorldNet that allows all of my lands to tap for 5 colors. So you see here I lead on Library. I picked up a bunch of lands throughout the draft. I do have to play every card I drafted, but thanks to having a Conspiracy or maybe 2, I actually don't remember if I had a second one here, but I'm only playing 43 or 44 cards overall, so not that big of a tax to have 5-color good stuff be my deck. Meaning I have kind of everything going on over here. But Scott, can you speak to what Bats was doing as we see him get started?
Yeah, he was our second pick overall in the draft, and he started on Time Walk, which we're seeing right now, thanks to Spellseeker. And then he really looked to maximize that as much as any person possibly could. He took the Conspiracy Double Stroke, which let him name a card, and then when he played that card, he copies it. He chose Time Walk. And the rest of his deck is full of tutors, like you saw, regrowth effects, lots of ways to just cast Time Walk over and over and over and over and over again.
So my ways of fighting against that, I do have somewhere in my deck a Flusterstorm, which could target both copies of Time Walk. So if I have that, I can maybe stop him from just taking a bunch of turns in a row here. But Bat's deck is set up to do it again and again, as Scott said. And he has some other combos as well, I believe we might get to see as the match plays out. Again, all of my lands tap for all 5 colors, and I led on Library this game, but with all of Bat's combos, I don't feel as confident as I normally would just sitting behind Library and getting to gain a slow advantage.
So getting started early with the Time Walks here. Bess was gracious enough to keep track of his extra turns for us.
Right. And I think normally in rotisserie cubes or just vintage cubes in general, a Time Walk that's used kind of as just an explore and getting in for 1 damage with Spellseeker normally doesn't feel that bad, but because he has so many ways to recur it, Bats is willing to fire it off pretty freely to continue to dig and set up all of the things his deck's built to do.
Yeah, I mean, from this position, there's a pretty reasonable chance that you just never get to take another turn in this game, which it's got to be a little spooky.
For sure.
Just an Oracle the Alpha, though.
Which, of note, shuffles another Time Walk into Bats' deck.
Yeah. Yeah, that double stroke is not tied to a single copy of the card, so any extra copies of Time Walk are also affected by it.
So now we're on Bats' last extra turn, and here's where I didn't know Oracle the Alpha did more than just shuffle in the Power 9. It also gives Bats the Scry. I take a little bit of damage. Again, decently high life total, but 2 full setup turns for him. I expect to still be in a fair bit of trouble, but actually you need to take another turn, it looks like. And on end of turn, Archmage's turn, taking the bird. Just looking to shut down Bats' mana a little bit. I think I might have been asking how many cards he had to try to judge how likely I am to get comboed at some point. I think it's less likely that I need the 5 mana.
It's a cycled Shark Typhoon here.
I assume that Odawara was my last land, because if I had still had it in hand to bounce, the shark would have been possibly nice.
Certainly makes the clock easier for a potential combo out on his side, but...
And it implies a level of interaction on Bats' part as well, that he did that for 1 less by letting me take the bird first, I believe. So he's ahead on mana, ahead on... Maybe not ahead on cards, since my librarying in the early game gave me a couple extras, but...
Curious if you might have something. Yeah, okay, I was going to say.
Very scary on this board. Blinking that spell seeker, he just gets another time walk, which is another 2 turns, etc.
Not to be so with the Archmage's Charm getting flashback.
He did have the mots to be able to play the other time walk as well. So, and then start blinking the Oracle of the Alpha to get more copies of Time Walk into the deck. Would have very quickly just lost to those Time Walk loops. Though, honestly, with the attackers he did build up, one more Time Walk probably would have been enough.
Right.
Looks like he has no cards in hand, though, so if I'm able to put up some defense for these creatures, I have a chance, even though there's some pretty scary cards in his deck.
Tutor just turning into a removal spell for that shark.
And Jarl, a favorite of mine, a card that's normally online only, and here allows me to recast the swords. A part I particularly like about Jarl is that the recast cards go back into the graveyard, so it allows other graveyard interaction like my Snapcaster Mage to work again. So there were games where I would cast the same spell several times in a row, and between the two of them, they enabled my Ancestral, not to the level that Bats' Time Walks have been enabled in his deck, but definitely you can see a couple of efforts taken to cast Ancestral several times. I believe that was a quick check to see if I had any twos.
Just the Demonic Tutor, right? I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when is it that Jarsel activates? Is it at the beginning of combat?
Beginning of combat. So okay. It works the turn he's cast. Unfortunately, the Archmage's Charm already exiled, so won't have that one for next turn. But getting a free demonic is nice. Dark Depths. So possibly... Okay, and Hex Mage. So have possible lethal next turn.
Yeah, Mana Drain was a good one to draw there.
Keep in mind, though, Bats has been scrying, always a chance that even out of cards, he's got something set up.
The Hollow Storm Giants hiding in his lands there.
His own Birds of Paradise, though, doing good work to make sure that doesn't become an issue. But Nexus probably gonna change that. Didn't see... Oh, but it doesn't matter if he scryed on top because Nexus shuffles.
Thankfully, not a time walk there, so not doubled.
Seeing that happen reminds me that he did call himself out on missequencing that at the table.
All the way down to 3 life, though. Not feeling like you need to block with the bird.
Activating Volrath Stronghold. So again, the benefit of having WorldNet, I just took 17 lands that do something. Even if it's marginal, I don't expect to activate Volrath Stronghold that often, but it's essentially a free 5-color land that has some potential to do something else. Remand here on Hex Mage.
Do it again.
Hex Mage comes down. Nothing for Jarsel to recast. No point in attacking with Jarsel since it feels like this is going to be a Dark Depth win.
All right, not a bad way to start a turn.
And again, even though I said I have Ancestral, that you can tell because of its old border is the one that Oracle the Alpha shuffled in. Just like this Black Lotus and one of the Mots and Bats has tucked away there, all the old border cards are representing the cards that were shuffled in with Oracle of the Alpha.
All right, well, here's an Eternal Witness, so...
That pair of Time Walks would be lethal because of just attacking with... Oh, no, because I could make the Dark Depths token.
Yeah. At any rate, Tashana's Tiebiter comes down and makes the Eternal Witness not quite as effective.
Here I go to 1, choosing not to block in case somehow... Oh, no, maybe I am choosing to block, actually. Wasn't sure what part of the turn we were in.
Well, no, yeah, because of you had to tap your bird to play the Tashana's.
Sure, I could have taken two off the Oracle, right? It's a 2-power creature?
Oh, right, yeah.
And I get punished by a sorcery speed bounce spell. I wasn't thinking about Jace, even though it's Rotisserie, all the lists are face up. I made the wrong play there, should have gone to 1. Now I have to keep trying to play through Bats having many dangerous top decks.
Yeah, he followed up his Mind Sculptor there with Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which, again, can threaten to flash back those Time Walks, so very, very dangerous board for you to be facing on 3 life.
Yes, really what I need here is a 3-drop like Kolaghan's Command or Flame of Anor, something that I can cast twice to good effect, thanks to Jarsel.
Looks like we're reaching for 3 mana.
Baleful Strix.
Baleful Strix.
Chance to draw a 3-mana spell here. I mentioned Flame of Anor, both Jarsel and Tidebinder are wizards. I had a slight wizard sub-theme in my deck. Them and Snapcaster Mage, already the ones you've seen this game so far. Pretty sure Jarsel's a wizard. No one's going to fact check me on that. No one's ever read the card before.
He is, in fact, a wizard, I can confirm. Fact checked.
There you see one of my man lands, but immediately getting tapped.
Just kidding. Oh. 4th Aerolingus for 2.
And I think it speaks to how perilous this game is, just how much it was difficult to decide to cast that for 1 or 2 or 3 with birds, choosing to leave the birds to be able to block. And
big attack here.
yes, this attack, thanks to the trample from the creature tokens, means Eternal Witness blocking one of them still would do at least 1 damage to Jace. Either one of them was lethal, whereas the 3-power creatures sent it bats. But chooses to keep his Jace, and keeping Jace means Time Walk, and Time Walk probably means death. There you see me drawing end of turn for the Monarch.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of bricked on lands here for a minute and has no other attackers at this point. So we'll need an attacker that can dodge the Strix to make this these turns matter.
Right. An important reason to get rid of Jace, because if Jace was still in play, it could bounce 1 creature this turn, bounce 1 creature the next turn, and then that would be the end of it.
First time walk turn. We plus a Jace, and
Although I guess Jace actually kind of bricks the Strix because
it
can take its power away. But
so we find Nexus again, so essentially just cycled that time walk turn there.
True, but as Prose is pointing out, and I think is relevant here, the ability to turn off Death Touch means that the Hull could attack, so if he takes enough extra turns, my 2 blockers won't be enough.
Definitely enough cards to escape that Uro here as well.
Yeah, and with another turn still floating, that seems like a good thing to do.
So, of note, the original Time Walk is gone due to being flashback by Jace, but there is the Oracle the Alpha Time Walk still in the deck.
Oh, but we found a Tamiyo instead.
Which is really good at presumably digging for Time Walk.
Right. I assume the card named is Time Walk.
Yeah, I'm not certain, but I have to imagine. I can't imagine much else that I would like to have here.
So we're on our last extra turn.
Of note also, we milled past a mystical tutor, so if we find a way to draw an additional card, we could flashback the mystical tutor with that the backside of Jace Spirits Prodigy.
Which could happen here, right? Jace could flashback Mystical Tutor, and then Tamiyo could mill the top cards, naming
Oh
Time
yeah,
Walk.
yeah.
So I
It's
think
just on board.
We're gonna dig instead, looks like. Not sure how
right.
many cards are left in his library, but between this and Tamiyo, it feels
Especially with Nexus of Fate also being a live hit. And there was the Time Walk. And there's a Time Spiral in there. I don't know how much he wants to shuffle in his graveyard at this moment, but I think that's him telling me that one of the cards was really good.
this feels like it should be enough, right? Because we can Time Walk, bounce it, or get it out of our graveyard with Tamiyo, Time Walk again.
Turns in
Right.
a row.
Do that again 2 turns from now.
Well, he might do it this turn, just to have 4 turns straight.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying so he can -3 here, plus on an extra turn, and then he can minus again 2 turns from now.
Sure. But that's enough turns that the already just Jace plus on Baleful Strix, he only needs to attack 3 times with the Hull, the Storm Giants. So this should be lethal on board at this point. See him point out Baleful Strix, and looks like we're going for Hull, so it looks like that's what's happening here. And points out that he has 3 turns to do that, and we move on to game 2.
Cool pair of decks there. Really, really fun stuff.
Yeah, that game ended up a lot closer than it felt like it was going to be after the first few turns.
Right, felt like I was really far behind, and then maybe gave up the game by not wanting to go to 1 life, and then Batch was able to fight his way back into it. But here we see a couple of random lands into Dark Confidant on my end. So had Library last game, Dark Confidant this game, just trying to build up some advantage, even though, again, even building an advantage at any point, I can just die to Batch casting Time Walk over and over again.
The mana base is truly a masterpiece.
It's a crazy, crazy card.
Here we see repeal on the token, but still becoming the monarch off of Dark Confidant. Dark Confidant earning us even more cards. I draw on my instep for being the monarch.
Upkeep Mystical Tutor here. Wonder what that's going to go get. Brave choice.
So that's on top. He draws it.
Look at Time Walk.
It is still
First
his double
additional
stroke card.
Can't imagine he deviated from that very often.
What do you mean? He could have swapped a Nexus of Fate. It does the same thing, Scott.
Yeah, sure.
Getting a bit aggro here. Stowaway and a small shark.
Yeah, I'm not sure if making the small shark is a show of strength because he doesn't need a bigger shark, or show of weakness just trying to get a card deeper.
I think he has so many ways to recur his Time Walk. He just wants to draw as many cards as he possibly can.
Right.
Him becoming the monarch with extra turns is brutal.
Yeah. Although he has no extra turns queued up right now, so. Although it looks like there's a Tameo in his hand, which means that with a land we could Time Walk, but. Oh, instead he's going to play Arcane Savant. Which I believe is casting C double.
Yes. C double makes a copy, so he has right now I think 900 Arcane Savants in play. So he's just put a die on it to represent that something has happened.
Yeah, and this is showing it for the camera.
Does your deck have Batwing Broom in it?
No Batwing Broom, no Rakdos Charm, none of the cards that we think might matter. I take 2 off of Pets Mage.
Do we have outs to a large amount of 3/3s on the other side of the board here?
I'm trying to remember if I had Dam this draft. I'm a big proponent of Dam. Like to take it most of the time, but spending a mana here, I don't think I have any outs at this point. And sure enough, just scooping it up. So we got to see both decks do their thing there, though. I ended up managing to rally in the rest of the matches to end up 2-2 overall. And how did Bats end up doing?
Yeah, he got 2 more match wins on top of this one, so he ended 3-1.
Yeah, definitely very consistent looking deck. Not surprised that it was one of the top performers. I believe the only winning record in that draft, as I'm now looking at the results. So this was the top performer, and it's easy to see why.
So that will wrap up the coverage of our first draft, the Rotisserie Draft. It's worth noting there was a 4th match played between Matt and Prose, but due to some technical difficulties, we actually lost the recording. Matt was playing a blue-white artifact deck with a number of 2-card combos, such as Sword of the Mechathopter Foundry, Time Vault, Manifold Key, and Grindstone alongside Painter's Servant. He managed to pull out a 2-2 record. Prose was playing a mono-green deck splashing red for Minsc & Boo, Timeless Heroes, and also managed to pull out a 2-2 record. So with all of those results in place after the first draft, we have Bats at the top with a 3-run record, and then 6 players at 2-2 coming out of the first draft, followed by Bryan with a 1-3 record. The tiebreaker for these standings, as shown on this graph, is the overall game win percentage of a player. Next up will be the pre-modern cube, so keep an eye out for that video coming soon. If you are interested in any more info about this draft or the league in general, or you just want to check out some of our older videos, feel free to check out the info panel for all of our links and info. Thank you again for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.